Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar, AI as Design Collaborator, Beyond ChatGPT for Architects. My name is Shalika Sivathasan, and I am the Administrative Assistant in the Continuing Education Department at the OAA. We will begin today's webinar by acknowledging the land on which we are meeting and calling in from. For millennia, the place we call Ontario has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples and nations who have been stewards of the land and who are deeply connected to its rich cultural and natural landscape. We would like to invite you in a moment of reflection to acknowledge our shared responsibility to address past and present injustices and provide space for Indigenous knowledge and worldviews to shape the architectural landscape of Turtle Island. Before we begin, I would like to share some important information to ensure an effective and professional webinar experience. Please be informed that this session is being recorded for quality and educational purposes. For accessibility, we provide automated closed captioning service available in multiple languages to accommodate the needs of our diverse audience. In order to maintain a stable internet connection, we have muted all participant microphones and disabled video feeds. Kindly note, the chat function has also been deactivated. However, we do highly encourage engagement through our Q&A window, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to submit any questions you have for our speaker there. Questions will be addressed during the designated question and answer period at the end of the presentation. For those seeking continuing education learning hours, please note that attendance is crucial. A minimum of 80% attendance is required for these hours to be accredited to your OAA transcript. Please just allow a few weeks for the processing and reporting of these hours. And lastly, please note that our presenter does not provide insurance, legal, or practice advice, and the OAA does not bear responsibility for errors or omissions in discussions during the webinar. Now, I'm excited to introduce our speaker for today's session, Arezu Talibzadeh. Welcome, Arezu.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining this session. I'm gonna give you a little bit about myself. My name is, I'm gonna make sure my slide works. Okay. My name is Arezu Talibzadeh. I am a senior architect working in Toronto. I hold a PhD in architecture and science engineering from Ghent University in Belgium. I have a master in design for health from OCAD University and a Master of Architecture from Azad University in Tehran. I am a registered architect with the OAA, and in the last 20 years or so, I've experienced designing mixed-use, commercial, and institutional projects across Canada. In the last 5 or 6 years, my all concern was on senior housing, long-term care retirement home, and trying to bring evidence-based design into action, especially for the aging population. My research experience is on sensory design, specifically acoustic environment for dementia care, and trying to limit the gap between the theoretical research and practical application in the built environment. As a soundscape researcher, I investigate how soundscape augmentation can help residents with dementia sense time and space in their retirement home or the building environment that they have and give them some agency. As part of the research that I've done for my PhD, I looked at large language models and how I can optimize sound selection for dementia care. And that's what actually brought me to do this session for OAA. In the past couple of years, I've watched architects around me, either my colleagues, my friends, or even the students, develop a complicated relationship with AI tools. Some of them, they want to avoid using them. Some try to use them a lot, and most of them in between. So there is always this question that how much we can use them, should we use them or not, and what is the future? So in the next 60 minutes or so, I would try to give you a clear picture based on my understanding of how these tools works and how they can provide help to architecture practice. And most importantly, what's the risks and legal action that we have to be aware of collectively as we move forward with these systems. So I'm not going to talk about the hype of these systems, and I'm not going to put you into the panic mode. It's just a clear view of what's happening at this moment with these systems and these tools. By the end of this presentation, my hope is that I can give you a working mental model of how these AI tools work and how we can use them in our practice, and also a clear view of the legal and ethical consideration that comes with all of these tools. And before I start, I want to have a disclaimer. I work with Montgomery System Architects in Toronto, but this presentation is based on my research and not based on what I do in MSA, so it's not part of MSA work. Before I start, I like to understand that how is your relation with this tool? So I have two questions to put on. The first one is, how often do you currently use AI in your work? Are you using it daily, weekly, occasionally, rarely, or never? Just put an honest answer in. I just want to understand where we stand in this room. And we give you 30 seconds, I think, or so. Shalika, let me know when you have enough answer. Okay, that's good. So I see that there is a lot of daily use. I think that's why you're here, because if you don't use it, you will not come here. I'm going to go to the next one. What is the biggest current question that you have about these AI in your practice? I put 4 answers there, but of course, in the end, when we have a Q&A, you can come up with more questions. How does it actually work? How to get better results? Is it safe to use with client information? And should we be using it at all or not? I think we should be okay now. Oh, that's very nice. Okay. Very well. So I'm going to talk about basically all of these, and I'm going to show you their roadmap that I have. So we have 90 minutes total, but I'm just going to talk for 60 minutes, and I'm sorry that you have to listen to me for 60 minutes. But I divided in 3 parts. In part 1, I'm going to tell you what is LLM and how they work, about 15 minutes. Then I'm going to see you some case studies and how we can actually use them in our practices every day. And in part 3, I'm going to talk about legal, ethical, and professional consideration of these tools, which is very important. But before I go in, I'm going to tell you that this is a very fast-moving field, as we all know. And if anyone comes and said that they figure it out all, they're lying, or they are trying to sell you something, or just don't believe that. Nobody really figured it out completely. I'm going to share what I know today, or basically last weekend when I put these slides together, but it's changing every day and every minute. And that's why I think we have to start the conversation right now, because as soon as we get to know it and we can get to use it, we can follow the progress and we can be part of this conversation. And that's why I think it's very important that we start as part of the OAA this conversation. So what is LLM and how they work? When we talk about LLM, which all of these AI tools that you are very familiar with, they are large language models. So I want to be very specific that these are language models, and that's part of the AI. Of course, artificial intelligence been around since 1960s, and there was lots of work behind the scene, but it was never been this much public. And since 2023, 2024, they will become very public, and you can see them all around, and they are mostly just free to use. I put some of them that they are very popular. Gemini by Google, ChatGPT by OpenAI, Copilot by Microsoft, that we all have the most access to it, Claude by Anthropic, and Llama by Meta, and then there is others like Grok and DeepSeek. Most of them are trained based on the same system, so they are very similar, but Some of them they are more transparent in how they do, how they train, how they use your data. Some of them are not transparent at all. I'm not here to tell you which one to use or not to use. I just want to say that if you are not comfortable with them and you don't really understand how they work, maybe you don't want to start with using, for example, DeepSeek or Grok, or you're going to go to the one that is more under Microsoft, that you have more understanding of the system, or ChatGPT or Google, and not use the one that is a little hard to understand, but it's always just your decision and your understanding of them. They all basically all work the same way. They are all large language models. So these are not tools, because LLM is not a tool, because tool is just going to do one thing for you. But these are not doing just one thing. They have lots of capability, and you can actually train them to do it based on your need and request. All of them train on enormous amount of human-generated text, as we know. So they went through all the text available to train these systems. So they are very good at language, mostly on Western English-based language when they started, although now they are moving to all their languages. So they are very good in reading, writing, summarizing, translating stuff, the base of the language. So they can be used as a thinking partner, because you can have that communication with them, like anyone who speaks. And right now they're available on very low cost for users. You can use them free. That's what I'm saying, not the implication of their environment that I'm going to talk about. But always the question is that, so why these systems that they are very good and learn a lot about human interaction with words sometimes feel like magic, and they can ask you something and they answer you truly, and sometimes they answer you something completely wrong. And I'm going to try to explain this in like 5 minutes. So I'm going to tell you how they work. If I give you this sentence and I ask you to fill it up, the architect walked into a meeting room carrying a set of. Your brain suddenly, because your brain trained for years with language and heard millions of words and sentences and conversation, it's going to go exactly and knows the context, because we are talking about architects. And if you're an older generation like me, it's going to go and say, oh, set of drawings, set of plans. If you're Gen Z, it's probably going to go set of what? It's going to carrying a laptop. So, but your brain understands that, put it in. You don't need to think, you don't need to search, it's going to come in. You would not say, oh, a set of pineapples, for example, or set of books. Even that doesn't really fit too much into this. So this is very simplifying way of saying that how these LLMs works. So because they train on various and lots of language books, websites, Wikipedia, so they learn how human speaks and how the language works. So they can actually tell what is the prediction for the next word. And that's the base of all of these LLM systems. So they predict the next word. They don't go and search for it unless you ask them to go. But in the real way that they work, you give them something, they look at what is there and they predict the next word. And then they look at the entire things and predict the next one. So it's always that back and forth and prediction system. So input, prediction, output, very simple. There is no database to go look up. There is no like real time. This is not a search engine on Google. This is just the way that they predict. The GPT comes from generative pre-trained transformer, just for you to note all of these words that come around. And they've been around for a while, but around 2017, there was a paper came from Google researchers about attention, called Attention is All You Need. And in that paper, they talk about how these systems have to pay attention to what is important in each sentence. For example, if I give you the same idea of the architect who graduated from Waterloo in 2013 and spent the last decades working in Toronto, carries a set of something, so you want to continue, the system now knows that it has to pay attention to architects and carries, and not the rest of the world. So Waterloo is not important in this. 2013 is not important. Toronto is not important. When they learn how to pay attention through their system, then they could become very fast to understanding and predicting the next word. And that's how they just went suddenly very fast and grow very fast in the last 6-7 years to become what we can use today. So a little bit about how the system works. There is the architecture that they call transformer behind all of these systems. They train on an algorithm. If you want to see how the transformer looks like, it's something like this. It's very schematic for us, but that's how they design it. And then they give you all the data to it. The system go evaluate, use the data for training. Then they have go through the circle of evaluation. They evaluate the system, and then there is a component of it that it always goes to product that they want to use, and then how they can use it in different devices. The 1 and 2 is always done mostly by research and academia. And then when it goes to 3, 4, 5, it goes to product designer, or when they want to use it in the public and how they use it. So it's always start with academia and then goes to product and out. I also want to talk about tokenization, because you will hear that word a lot when working with this, because these are computer system and machine learning. So they don't really use words to train. They take the whole sentence, they tokenize it, they divide it into the section. Each section gets a number, the ID number. That ID number goes to the system. They predict the next number comes back, became a word, come back to you, you can see it. Different system, they do it a little differently. Some of them tokenize it based on word. Some of them tokenize based on characters. And these days, most of them, they just have their own rule of tokenization. It's not based on human words or character. They have a different way. So there's something in between. And this tokenization, especially the new way that they do it, is why, for example, if you have a typo in your, when you're typing with them, it actually can understand what you're saying. So it's not basically based on every word that you put in. So this tokenization is a little different between what system you use, but that's the base of all of these LLMs. So you can see that they don't really care what you say. They just take it as a number, predict the next number, give it back to you. So they don't have any feeling, not yet, behind them. It's just the machine learning system that goes through all of these tokens and give you the answer. So they tokenize, they move forward, predict, move forward. And that's how they can give you the answer for the next one. And they give you always the best answer, not the true answer, based on the prediction. And this is something that we need to know a lot and be aware of it. They have 2 types of memories. They have one comes from their training. So because they go through enormous amount of data during the training, they basically, most of them go through all the literature available, all the website available, and that number is really huge. And then sometimes they put it back to Wikipedia, and then they want to check all of these to make sure that everything is correct, because Wikipedia is still the one source that has citation, and it's mostly correct because someone always regulated them and look at them. And then that's their base memory. But there is also the context. It's what you give them as a memory. So when you start a conversation with them, that context is become something that they can actually look at and make on top of it. So because they are trained based on existing literature, something like a zoning bylaw of Toronto is probably not based on their training. So they don't know anything about it. But if you want to discuss it with them, you can actually copy paste a part of the zoning bylaw into it, start talking about that, and then they can use that as a memory and then have that conversation with you about it. So you have to always remember that what we are talking to them, they may not train on it, but we can actually teach them. And of course, some of them, they may use that as a training for their next generation. So it's always happened, and we're going to talk about that. Another thing that I wanted to say at the end of this is hallucination. We all heard that these systems hallucinate, and that means that sometimes they give you, say something or give you the answer that is not true. So we have to always remember that they are not based on true and false. They are optimize to produce the best prediction for the next. So they are not based on true or wrong or false, true and false. They are just based on the best answer. If what you're talking about is common knowledge, it's something that exists a lot outside of your world. So you know that they train on it, they heard it, they read it a lot, and it was based off the training, there is a good chance that you get the answer that is true. But if you're asking something that is very specific to your field and it wasn't based on their training, especially in architecture, the philosophy of it, it's written a lot. The construction part of it, it's not a written knowledge. So they're never trained on it and they don't know much about it. So if you don't give them the enough context, they don't understand how to use it. And then they're going to start hallucinating and give you the answer that they maybe not be correct. So you have to always remember that. Sometimes I hear people say that, oh, we cannot trust this system because they don't give us the correct answer. So they are not a search engine. They are not there to give you a correct answer. They are there just, you can have them as a collaborator to get to some point. So these are basically all the very simple way of knowing how these LLMs work and all of the word and definition that comes with them. But we need to know how to use them, and we need to how to trust them or not. So I'm going to start with one sample, and it's just going to move to the next section, that some of the case studies. So for example, OBC wasn't part of their training. And I'm going to show you one of the sample that happened to one of the construction site. I'm going to show you the email that came from the site. I mean, like, it's not the entire email, but kind of the email. So there was a discussion about the Juliet balconies guard with the construction site and the city inspector, and there was lots of back and forth understanding the height and the regulation behind it. So the project manager from the construction site sent me an email with the OBC number in it and the description of that OBC. And I look at it, and we wanted to send it back to inspector on site. And I look at it, and I was like, okay, this is fine. I just want to go and double check it to make sure that number works. So I put this OBC number into OBC, the OBC itself, and search the PDF. 33127 sounds okay. Where is it? I searched 2024 OBC. I couldn't find it. I was like, okay, maybe it's the older version. I went to the older version. That number didn't exist. I think 3.3.1 ends at number 24 or 25. So 27 wasn't there, never was there. So I was like, that's very interesting. Where did that number came up? Why is it there? What happened? But the whole wording of it seems okay. So I went back, actually look at the OBC and find out that that sentence of the OBC actually is there. It's just the number is different. It's like 33118 or something. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to correct it. I'm going to send it back to the inspector, and everything was fine. But I was curious to know why it happened. So at the time, I put the question that I thought probably the contractor asked into Gemini, I think, the Google search. And I saw that at the time, this was the answer that came in that chat box, because I don't know where they look at it. They look at, there are some sites that they share OBC stuff in it. And I think it just came with a number that it was very close to reality and the true, but it wasn't true. So, and it showed me that, okay, so that's how they use it. People put it into ask for a question, the answer comes, but it doesn't mean that it's true, and you have to always go and check. And of course, there is something about using it in the construction side these days. They lose a lot in the construction site using ChatGPT. And if you are on a CA or you're working, I'm just going to tell you that be careful, because unfortunately people on site use it a lot. So this is one way of make sure that, yes, the answer comes. This is not a search engine. That's not the way we have to use it. So what is the best way to use it? I'm going to talk a little bit about it. And when you open Claude or ChatGPT or any of these, usually it shows you something like this. So you can put your question or answer in it. I have two different ways. So prompting, this is called prompting. So you actually put your question in and it's called prompting. You can do it very short with no context, or you can actually give it a context to do. And I'm going to show you in a real site how to do it, or how it's going to be different if you're interested in. But in case that if you want to ask a question that is very specific to your project, if you just go and ask them, help me with something or do this, they may not know the context. Make sure that you always put the context in. So you can see that in the left, I just put a small question, the answer. In the right, it's a longer question. I'm going to put this in ChatGPT and show you how it works. But you have to always give them a good prompting. Prompting was very important in 2023, 2024. Everyone was talking about prompt engineering. Everyone wanted to be prompt engineer, but actually nobody needs to be prompt engineer. It's something that you can easily do it. It's just you have to know how to do it. So I'm gonna go to ChatGPT, and for this presentation, I'm just gonna use ChatGPT and Claude. And I'm gonna say that my ChatGPT is a free version of ChatGPT. Claude, I have a subscription with Claude. That's why it knows me very well. It's a little too well. And that's why you see my name is there and it's gonna come. I have the prompt ready, so I'm just gonna see if I can copy and paste here. So first I'm going to do a little, just imagine that there's a project, there is a problem with the exit the stairs and the distance between them. And the question came from city and you want to understand how to do it. You just say, okay, I'm going to go and ask ChatGPT. And you put the question in, help me with an exit the stair question. And then you put it into the chat, it comes back, and they are getting very smart. So actually, when they don't know right now, they actually come back and say, give us some more information, which wasn't like this last year or 2 years ago, because they would come with stupid answers, but now they're getting better. So I'm gonna go and do it a little better and put a more complete answer. So I'm going to say that I'm working on a 4-story mixed-use building in Ontario, and I need to think through exit the stair separation based on OBC. Can you look into it and let me know what I need to do? And then it's going to go and search, and now it's going to actually look at because we tell them where to go and look, it's going to go and look into OBC. It's going to do something that you really don't need to know. Some of them you can look. This is something that if you are working in the field for a long time, you don't really need to ask ChatGPT for it, but I'm just going to show you a very simple way of how to use them and how not to use them and what they can do or cannot do. But you see that they are getting very good, and then they give you where to go and look. So you can actually go to this site that unfortunately everyone goes in, or fortunately, and give you some answer. And then you can go and fact check to make sure that they are correct. But it's just, at least it gives you some idea of where to go look very fast, which can be very helpful if you are in a rush. So that's the base of prompting and how do the communication with them. Make sure that when you're using them as collaborator or as just an agent, give them a context, make sure that they have the context, because it's very important they know what are you talking about. You can give them a role to play. So you can actually tell them that act as an inspector, or act as an engineer, or act as a colleague. Just explain it so they know how to answer you, and they are getting very good in taking that role and play with it. Because they are very chatty and they want to talk a lot, you can be explicit about how much information you want out of them. You can tell them that just do this communication in 200, 300 words and not go more than that, to make sure that they don't go way over your time and space. And also make sure that don't use them as like a vending machine, that I'm gonna put this in and you give me something and I go away. Always make it a conversation, because and you have to do it a conversation, honestly, because they cannot give you a good answer if I just ask them once. you have to do back and forth with them. And when you do back and forth, then you can get a very good, better answer with them in your collaboration with them. So that's something that is good to know. I'm going to do, because we have a little time, I'm going to show you some of the case studies. And these case studies, of course, is just one way to use them. But this is the ways that been used in the offices a lot these days at BC. I'm going to show you one very quick sample of using it in, make this small, as a visual, because you can actually use them for visual collaborator if you are in a rush and you don't have time. I'm going to show you one sample. There was a project. It was on Revit. It was on a model. It was very beginning. We asked one of the junior to give us some view of it. So one of the architects wanted to take that view and go and sketch on it for the design. They put it into, they had an escapes. They left us with all this view, but the view were like very light. They were not very high contrast, and they were like 15 of these views, different views. And it was, okay, we need to make them a better contrast. So one way was, of course, to open Adobe Photoshop and go and put this all in and make it to high contrast. But we've said, okay, let's just see if Claude can help us to do this. So we went to the Claude, we asked Claude to take this, give it a high contrast, and give it back to us. And it was some back and forth between us and Claude to make sure that he understands exactly what we say from the contrast. And then it came back with something like this. So I'm just going to show you one of the view, but it happened it took 5 minutes. They put it in, it came back with a high contrast, and it was done. And then we said, okay, this is good. Now do it for all the 15. And they did it for 15, and it was a very quick one. Is it the best way of using these tools? Or sorry, these agents? Of course not. I mean, you can do it with Adobe, but if you're in a rush, if you just want to test and see if the system works, you can see that they work, and now they can even understand through the communication. The difference between using this and Adobe is that although right now Adobe has AI in it, but usually in Adobe, you need to know the tools, you need to know where to go to do it. In this case, you can have a communication with them and tell them what you want, and they do it for you. Of course, these LLMs coming into Adobe, and Adobe is going to have that very soon. So this is one way, and you see it happens in the offices, not a lot, but you will see it around you that, for example, you have unit layout, you have 3 different set of finishes, and you want to show the client how it's going to be different look in the 3 set of finishes. So we put this into the AI, we give them the finishes, and then it comes back in 5 minutes. It's going to take a little time, but it's 5 minutes with 3 different view of that room, with the set of the finishes that you have. You just need to put the finish in and say, this is flooring, this is wall cover, this is that, and then they come back with it. And it's very fast. And then you can actually ask them to work on the contrast, give it a shadow, still doing the same things that Adobe may do, or someone with that skills can do, but it just needs less skills. If it's a good or bad things, I leave it to the end to judge. But for something very fast that we want to do, and actually it doesn't need our skills, it's just going to use it as a help. They are a very good agent to do that for these visuals. But this is not the only way to use them. The best way that I think we can use them in our work, it's when we need to do something that is a little more tricky. And I'm going to go to Claude. I tried to do this case study this morning. Claude has a limit. All of these have a limit of doing it. So it didn't give me the answer this morning, but I'm going to show you how I did it. So if I have a project, I'm going to go on top. I'm going to make this large so you can actually see the prompt. So I have a multi-story, just imagine I have a multi-story buildings, 14-story buildings. And this is either a school, a commercial project, or a long-term care project, or healthcare with so many doors in it. And there is lots of hardware differences between all of these doors. So the hardware consultant is involved, low voltage consultant is involved, electrical engineers involved, and interior designer, and of course us as architects. And I need to, so I have my set of my door schedule. I have it ready. I need to go to low voltage to make sure that which door gets the, for example, door alarm, contact, security camera, all of these from low voltage. And then I have to go to hardware schedule and look at all of these doors one by one and see what we decided for the hardware of each door. And then I bring it into my schedule to make sure that I can share it with electrical engineer and ID so they can get their input in. This is not the hard things to do. It's just really time consuming, especially because hardware usually comes with a report and not actually a schedule. And then you have to go one by one to each page and do it. So I put it into Claude and I said that I attached the door schedule, hardware and low voltage. And these are the abbreviation that I need to be clear about each door. So I wanted Claude to look at the hardware schedule and low voltage and give me for each door, each of these abbreviation. Of course, Claude came back and asked me so many questions. He wanted to know if I want to use it for all the levels, specific levels, how I want to use it. And I was like, and asked me some questions. So I said that, yes, for example, our architecture drawing schedule has all of the hardware information. Just ignore it for now, use the hardware report. And then I want to cover all of the floors and I want the result as an Excel sheet. So it went and I started thinking about it and put everything in. And then I asked Kat if there is duplication or if anything doesn't seem right, highlight it for me because I want to look at that. So it was doing this, asking me question, going through, and then if you put it in the in Claude, it's going to take a while for them to go because they want to show that they think, although they don't think. They go all of these level and they're going to show you how they work. They're going to show you some of the information that they have, and they come up with answer. But unfortunately, at this point, this morning, Thursdays are not a really good day to use Claude. It's very busy. They said that come back at 1:40. I'm going to give you an answer. So I'm going to show you the one that I actually did, and it gives me the answer. So this was the one that we did. So Claude came back, all the door numbers, all the rooms, and gave me all those abbreviation and highlighted the one that was noted into hardware schedule and low voltage. And then, so I could actually go look at this, and I went back and double check it to make sure that it's correct, like every time that you put your door schedule together. But it happened very fast and easy in like 5-10 minutes. And then I had this, and then I exported to Excel so I can share it with all the engineers and all the consultants so they can have it, and we can always go. And if we need to, for example, change that corridor door to have card reader, we can just go and choose the card reader. And we can do the same things in Excel. So this was like something that it can take between 4 hours if someone knows, or if it's a junior, it may take like 8 hours a day to put all of these together, going through all of those report schedules. We did it just in 10 minutes. In this case, this project was in the like 25% CD, so it was not even to the tender. So we knew that we have to go through all of these over and over by the end. So it was a very good way to just have a base to start using it. And it worked very well, and we did it, and we didn't use it actually, we just did it as a test, but it did work very well, and we changed it. So this is something that we can use in our practices going forward. You just have to know how to put it in, and you just have to make sure that you use it at time so it doesn't give you that limit. Even if you pay for these products, they have a limit of the use of the energy and their system. So during the workday in North American time, sometimes it's not the best time to do it. Another things that we can do, and it's becoming very popular, just using them when we do CA. And I don't have a sample to show you, but I'm just going to tell you how we can use it in the CA. It's you can, when you have your specification ready, You can design an agent into LLMs, and when you design an agent, is basically you make sure that you explain for that agent what you exactly want them to do every time. It can happen, you have to code it, but the coding is going to happen through themselves. So you don't have to actually code it, but your IT people and BIM people, they can code it. So you tell them that this is our specification for this project, take it, and every time submittals come in, and instead of you going through the submittal to see if it matches the specification, you just put that submittal to that agent. It goes back and check it to make sure that it's correct. This is a very time-consuming process for everyone who's doing CA. So especially at some point in the project, when you receive 20 of them every day and you don't have time to do it, it's become very tiring. The agent can help you very much to do this. And yes, they may make mistakes, but even a human can make mistakes, and you can always go and check to make sure that they are correct. And then you can, after a while, they learn from you and they can get better and better. One thing that I want to show you in Cloud, I'm going to go to the main page, actually, out of this to all projects. And you can see that because I use Cloud for a while, I have lots of projects throughout it. And I'm going to tell you what to do the project. These good things about all of these, that they have a chat, then you can go just start a conversation with them. I did this morning, for example, about the door schedule. But the best way to make sure that everything goes in one place is that you go to the project and just make a new project. For example, you want to do OAA presentation, give it a name. You may want to give it something that you can find easily later on, create a project. Now so now you make a context for them. So now every communication that I have with this one project is going to stay in this one place. And it's very easy later on, so I can go and find it or search it. And every time that I want to go back to the same project, I don't have to go and redo my stuff and tell them what I'm going to do, because they have the memory inside them. So basically, you're making the memory. This can happen in Cloud and in ChatGPT, and even the free version of them, they have it. And then you can put the files in. So if you have a specification, you can put it in and they can always go and use it. If you don't even want to put it, make an agent, and they can always refer back to it. Just be aware that if I want to put something in, for example, all the samples that I show you, I removed all the identification of the project from the PDF. So I basically deleted everything about the project, about the consultant, everything. I deleted that. So it was, when I put a door schedule with no identification in it, it's just a set of doors with a name and number and nothing that can flag a problem. Of course, if it was something that goes under confidentiality, I would not even put it there. So, and that's what I'm going to talk next, because this is very important to know what to put in and what not to put in. So, sorry that I went through it very fast. There is so many things, but I really want to focus on this part, which is more about the legal stuff and how we have to be aware and we have to understand it. I'm going to talk about the confidentiality and client information. What happens when you put something into the context window? I'm going to talk about environmental impact, which I'm pretty sure is on all of your minds and all of my minds. I'm going to talk about copyright, IP, and authorship, on training data, and on ownership of outputs when you have the communication with them, and the professional liability that comes with using all of these. So what happens when you type something? Because this is all about the confidentiality. So when we talk about the memory at the part one, I said that when you put their train and their memory comes from the training, you can make it context and you can put something there, and that's going to be a context between you and the machine. But actually it's a little bit more complicated, because these systems are, some of them are not very clear about if they use your input as training or not. Some of them are more clear. And if you use the free version of them, you should always know that they probably use it as a training later on. If you pay for it, then there is a way that you can opt out of the training and say that you don't want your information to be part of the training. But of course, it's still how much we can trust them. That's up to you and how you want to deal with them. Just be very careful that if something goes under confidentiality, just don't put it there. If something between you and client that you know is very confidential, there's no reason to put it exactly there. If you can always copy and paste partial of it and put it in and start a conversation, you don't need to give them too much information. You can always figure out if it's trained on your inputs or not based on the subscription that you have, and go to all of those legals and see if they actually use it for training or not. Sometimes they use it for training and it's okay. We want to teach them about architecture business. Why not? Construction. But if they are using it for training, make sure that don't put anything confidential. It's very simple. And this is one that is a little tricky. You want to know where the data goes. And of course, for us in North America and in Canada, most of our data goes to the US. And we need to understand that are we covered under Personal Information Protection Act of Canada or not when the data goes out to the US. We are in Ontario, so we are under Freedom of Information in Ontario. But this part is a little tricky to understand because it's really hard to know where the data goes in each of these systems. They don't have just one data center. So you have to do a little due diligence if you want to use it for something very, very specific about your project. So simple, don't paste any document that goes under confidentiality. Remember that how it works. So everything that they put in, it may use as a training. So be aware of that. If you want to really use them as Collaborator, invest a little money on it and subscribe. It's not that expensive. I mean, you still have to pay. I paid $30 per month for Cloud, and still it has a limit. But at least when you have that contract with them and you have it, then you can go and fight, let's just say it, with them if you need it. But just make sure that if you want to use the free one, they probably use your information as training. And make sure that your firm has a policy on AI, or if doesn't have a policy, push for it. Because once you have that policy in place, then it's going to be very easier for everyone to use, and everyone may use just one same system, not that with no policy, people go and use whatever they want, right? So make sure that that is in place. It's time to have that policy in all of our offices. So I'm going to move to environmental impact before you all come and kill me, because I'm not advocating for AI, but because I'm in a positive side of it. I understand that there is environmental implication with using all of these AIs. There is lots of information outside. There is lots of things happening these days. You hear it everywhere. Some of them are very true. Some of them are not true. At some point, OpenAI came out and said that every inquiry between you and ChatGPT is just a few drops of water. That was their idea. And then there was another research came out and said that actually it's much more. It's a bottle of water. It doesn't really matter which inquiry is. The problem is that every time you use it, there is an energy implication. And if I use it once, yes, it's a little bit, but millions of people using it every time. So you can just understand how much. The International Energy Agency estimated in end of 2024 that by 2026, the consumption of data center, AI, and cryptocurrency is going to be doubled by 2026. And so the electricity that they used at the time was 460 terawatt per hour, like 2022. In 2026, now we went way more. It's 1,000 terawatts per hour. And that's for 1 year, that's the amount of electricity consumption of countries that size of Japan, for example. So yes, there is a lot of energies being used, and they use in different ways. So during the training, they use largest amount of energy possible because they have to go to the machines that they are very powerful. Those need lots of electricity. It happens once in a while. It's not happening every day. It used to be once a year when they update their system. Now every few months, it's getting worse and worse, the time limits. There is a limit for them. In US, they have to actually book a place to do this. And they have a month, for example, for training every time they do it, each of these systems. So they cannot do it all the time. Everything has to be clear when they do the training and where. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to use energy. They're going to use lots of energy. So this is one. The interference is what you do with them every time you put something in. And of course, it depends on what you ask them to do and how you ask them to do. But just imagine that it's happened billions of times every day. So there is lots of energy is going through that. And it's growing because people not stop using them. And there is one more thing that I find it very interesting is the data center itself. Of course, these days, there's lots of protests in the US about building these data centers because they use lots of energy. But as an architect, the whole building has carbon footprint too. And these are very large buildings with a long carbon footprint. So you can understand that all of these going to add up to be a lot of energy. But how we should deal with that at this point of the time with our knowledge and how these systems work. I have some ideas. It's not basically the best ideas. I got them through the research that I did, and I put them in 4 points. But of course, this is just very summary of them. We don't need to use the most powerful system all the time for everything that we do with them. Copilot is very, for example, good to do some of the stuff if you need to do inside Microsoft. They are very powerful now. They are very simple. They use it locally most of the time. So that's a very good one. If you want to do OBC search, as I show you in the part 1, you don't really need that AI. You can do it yourself. You can make an agent inside your IT system that do it for you. That's going to use less energy. So we can be very smart on how to use them. We don't need to use ChatGPT to ask for a dinner recipe or something. These are like, just imagine that every time, doesn't matter what you put in the context, they're going to use the same energy. So just use it, just be aware of when and how to use it. And the volume that want to use it per day, you can make a stop on it. Like OpenAI is not that much. OpenAI, I don't know if they have a limit. I know ChatGPT doesn't have that much limit, but Claude these days have a limit, so you cannot use it more than a certain amount of time. Recently, they are becoming very funny, and they ask you to just stop and go to sleep, or stop and go back the next day. Then you extend your timing after a while. They want you to stop. This is just a show and marketing, of course, but they can remind you to stop. Make sure that always close the tab when you finish with them, so don't keep them running. Claude, I know that if you use it and you ask them something and they're doing their calculation or they doing the process, you have to actually be there and hover above. Otherwise, if they're not going to do it because they want to make sure that the human behind it. These are all like remind you that use them and close them and don't use them all the time. And make sure that you know where the models run if you can, is where it goes, which it's really hard to understand. It's really hard to do the carbon footprint calculation for this system at the moment. It's not as easy as taking a flight overseas and do the carbon footprint calculation that we always do. So just make sure about that. And one of the things that we have to do, we can do as a professional architects, we have to push the providers to give us more clear answer. So we actually always have to ask them and push them for a result. But it's the same as other things that we do in architecture. We know that there is a downfall about it, but AI is here. Everyone's going to use it. It's not going to go away. There is lots of uncertainty, but and there's concern. Be aware of it and make sure that we push for transparency. And it's like the same other things that we do with climate, when it comes to the conversation, we're always pushing for the better information, and we have to do the same things here and make sure that we have an informed practice. When it comes to copyright and authorship, the models train on copyrighted material, yes or no? That's one question. Another one is that what's going to happen to what we put in and the authorship and IP of our stuff. When it comes to training, they train based on everything's available at the time. So in my opinion, if the book is published, they can train on it, that's fine. When they go to mimic it or duplicate it or sound like it and then act as they are a real writer, then the problem comes in. So you can look at how they train their system and how they use it. And there's lots of stuff happening in the world, especially in the US, lots of lawsuits about how they train it. So just be aware that if they train on something, it's one, yes, it's open source. If they use that to duplicate, then there's a problem. But what you put out there is important because as we talk about, if you put it out there, they can use it. You have to be you have to just know how they use it and be aware that don't put anything that they don't want to go and be used against you. But there's also a very gray area right now in some of this stuff, because it's always based on your prompting. So if you use an image, if there is an image that you prompt and the image came out, if anyone else can go and use the same prompting and get the same image, I don't think you can have IP protection on that image. If you have it through the conversation and it's like back and forth with the system and then came up with the image or anything, any product, then you can actually go and say that this is yours because it was your footstep there. And that's why I said, make a project in any of this system, keep everything there so you can go back to them and relate to them. And you can actually show that it was not just one prompt and the answer. You can use them as assistant in the proposal or specification, generally fine, but you may need to put a disclosure at the end. Some of the RFP that comes, they actually don't want you to use it or want you to make very clear about how to use it. This is happening in academia, in the real world, in the industry. So just make it very clear. As long as you're clear, I don't think there's any problem. If they generate code or a script, then it's really, really hard to understand the limits. So this is something that it has to be part of the IT and IP policy in the office so they know how to deal with all of this. And in the end of it, it's just that for the liability, these models are not licensed. We are the professionals of license, so everything comes back to us. We have to be aware of it and we have to make sure that we double check everything, especially everything related to safety, codes, specification. It's on us. We have to make sure we don't even need to maybe to use them. Use them in all of the communication if it's as a junior staff that really tries to be the best, but they may make mistakes because they may not know. So double check them when they need to, and document all these involvement, because that's very important. You can always go back to them and show that it was a communication, very honest communication, and it shows your critical thinking through it. And then talk to your insurer, because they are know that they know where you stand and how you can act upon this. And this is important because I want to say that we need to have that policy in place, either through OAA or through our own businesses, to know where we can go. And if you say that I'm not going to use this in my office, it's not going to happen, you know that it's going to happen. Everyone has it on the phone, they're going to use it. It just, and instead of let people to do whatever they want, we can just have a policy on how to use it best as a best practice. So I apologize for talking too fast and too long, but I wanted to go through all of them in 60 minutes. I leave you with some of the resources for if you want to learn more about how they work or how they can use them. There are some very good resources and they are all open from Harvard. Stanford has some videos that are very helpful, and Coursera has some courses. If you want to look at the construction side of it, there are some outside, but I couldn't find one that I can actually say that they figure it out, or they really know what they're doing. So I know you know more than me on that maybe, and you can always look at them. But one way that they are very helpful, you can actually ask the system to tell you. If you want to go to ChatGPT and ask them to explain something for you, they actually have a very good way to explain and make the conversation going. And that's one way to just start understanding something about them that you may not understand. And that's very helpful. And by that, I'm going to leave it to question and answer. And I'm going to give it back to Shelika.
Great. Thank you so much, Arzu, for this really informative presentation. I know I learned a lot. It was really helpful to see you sort of break down the process in the beginning and show some case studies. So I know we've already got some great questions in the Q&A window, but if you do have a question for our speaker, please do. You should find the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. Type your question in there. But yes, we already have quite a few here. So our first question comes from Charles Azar, and this was from early on in your presentation when you were showing, I think it was the first prompt about the exit stairs. So Charles asks, or Charles says, sorry, I asked ChatGPT the exact question you asked about exit stairs, but I got a different follow-up question than yours. How could this be explained?
So very good question. As I mentioned it before, because these are not search engine and they give you the prediction of the next, like just next word. So every time you ask them, they come with a different prediction. So it's going to be a little different. That's why sometimes we should not actually ask them a specific question about a specific things. We know that they are really bad at math, for example. If you ask them math question, they go crazy because they don't know how to do the math. They just predict the next one. So if you have that's why that was a very bad kind of a prompting to put that kind of a question in, because they're just going to go and predict the next question and the answer. The best way is that if I give them the context, for example, this part of the OBC, and this is exactly my question, and still every time you ask them, they're going to come back with a different one. They are not set on an answer. And that's one of the problems, or one of the way that these system works. They are good for communication back and forth. They are not good for a true answer. I hope that was enough answer.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. So our next question asks, so what about AI models that are installed locally on a personal computer / private cloud? Don't they guarantee confidentiality?
Define guarantee, but yes, they have if you have it locally installed and it's under your server, there's a confidentiality. That's why it's easier for you to make an agent, put everything's there and use it. Just make sure that it's clear that they cannot use your data. And of course, everything that we put out into the cloud as internet, there's always breach of confidentiality and everything, but you have to be clear with them. And if they said that this is just going to stay locally, it's going to stay locally, and you can go and fight them legally if they say that. So yes, that's true.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Our next question asks, so they say, most of the presentation has been regarding written or verbal information. What kind of graphical work can these systems do?
So yes, so LLMs are basically language models. So it's more about writing and thinking and those stuff, and not about AIs that works with more image and that part of the work that we do. I show you one example of how we can use it into the imagery, but LLMs are not really good for anything outside of the speaking and language. There are other AI tools that they are very good, and you can actually talk to them and they do it. I didn't put this presentation based on those. This is just basically was on LLMs. If you want to reach out to me, I can give you some of the examples that I've seen used, and they are out there. These LLMs more good when you have, for example, long reports from, for example, all of your like wind study report of your project, and you want to go back to them and find something, you can actually use it in LLM. These are very good for reading stuff and communication.
Okay, and I think we're going to put your email address in the chat, so everyone should be able to access that if you do want to get in touch with our speaker after the presentation. And also the resources that were mentioned have also been linked in the chat for everyone. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question here. So, bit of a tricky one. So this person has asked, isn't it a form of deception if we charge the client X dollars to do a job and then we get the answer or reports in a few seconds from AI? I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
That's a good question. I may not have answer for all of your questions. By the way, I should have said at the beginning. I am still trying to figure it out. But yeah, maybe you can come back, and it depends on how much you actually want to. The point is, okay, let's just say it like that. If you get the question from the client, put it in ChatGPT and just copy paste the answer back to the client, yes, you're cheating on client. But usually, honestly, that's not how it's going to happen. You have to understand what you're going to go and ask these LLMs. And that's a process. And you are there, can do this because you have all the expertise to do that. So it doesn't really matter that time that you spend. It's just that you know how to do it, you know how to communicate with them, and then you can get the best way. And usually you don't ask for answer. You just have all of this concept and all of this information. You just go to these LLM and ask them to provide the logical steps to how to present this to clients, for example, or how to show it to clients. So I had a colleague that wanted to do a case study a couple of years ago. She had to do some case study for hospitals. And she asked me if she can use LLM. And she was like, okay, so I'm going to go to LLM. I give them all of the table of context and I ask LLM to fill it up with case study. And I was like, I understand. I think you should not do this. I think you should have your case study ready. Understand the answer. You put it into LLM and ask LLM to logically divide it to the different table of context and how you can present it better to someone who may not know it. So for me, this is the way that they can help us to do. I may be wrong. I don't think. And then another thing is that, and it comes with when we talk about the climate implication. Yes, they do it very fast. They may use lots of energy, but a junior staff can do it in 2 days, still use lots of energy and time and money. So it's always like you have to find that balance. That's the only answer that I have. Sorry, I don't have legitimate answer for it because we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. It sounds like you're sort of saying that the expertise goes into the input. So whatever your training is, your expertise, that goes into the input as opposed to sort of charging based on the output. So great. Okay. So there's a question about resources. You've already, I know, included those 3 resources on your slides, but someone has asked if there are any other resources you would recommend to learn more about AI and how to use it more effectively and responsibly for day-to-day practice. Excuse me. So, were there any beyond the 3 that you linked that you might recommend?
If you search for Stanford University, I have to find it. I can send it out. They have some very good educational YouTube videos where they teach about this. They are very helpful to know. There are a couple of companies that now do architecture, engineering, construction, and AI, and they look into it. I find a few of them, some of them, they have to pay the money, but they have some webinars that you can access without paying. I can send that to OAA and they can share it in the email with you. I'll just need to find it. And they are good. They're not in architecture and in construction, we are still trying to figure out. I mean, some of us may advance. I'm not the advanced one. I just know the logic of it more than that part. But there is so many things happening. So if I find something, I'll share. I hope that helps. Or if anyone knows anything, please share. I mean, the whole idea is that we have to share because we are just starting to use them.
Great point. Yeah, if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to also share those in the Q&A window, and we can maybe distribute them afterwards. Or, of course, you can get in touch with our speaker by their email address, which is in the chat. Okay. So someone has asked here, how do you see AI integrating into real architectural production workflow beyond visualization, especially in documentation, code compliance, and BIM coordination?
I think that's the very good question, because I think that's actually where and how the LLM can help us into the flow of our work, not on the part that we have expertise to do it and we really like to do it for like designing, we can do it. We don't need LLM. But they can actually come into the different process. There was one idea before that, and there is a book about it. I don't remember the name, but I can share it. But the book came a couple of years ago, so now it's a little outdated. About that in construction, you use it 30% in SD, 20% in DD, and like the rest in the CD. I don't know where that they come from. That's how they say it. But I think it's going to use in flow if you are, for example, I said that you can use in this CA a lot because you have all of your stuff ready by then. You can put it into the agent and you can always refer to that stuff, the specification, your drawing, so you can check everything that come from the side. You can basically use it for RFI or for all the submittals very well. That's really helpful because that's part of our job. Is very time consuming and it happens in a very short period of time. During I know the BIM is bringing AI into Revit. Well, 2027 Revit has AI, which we don't want to use, I think, that much. It's not really good yet. It's going to get there, but you can always bring it. There are lots of companies that now make these agents that you can actually install as add-on to BIM, and they can, for example, check where there is a problem. When we do the clash detection in BIM model and we have the report, we can put it into these agents and ask them to clarify everything, make them just the stuff that is actually really time consuming. It's not that much of your critical thinking coming to it or your design. You just have all of the comments, for example, put it into the agent, make it very clear and the different tables for each consultant. So who knows who has to answer which question, what is the relationship, if the comments go to more than one consultant, how you can ask them to actually manage it very well in the system and you can share it with everyone. So it's basically in every aspect of our work, they can come and help. We are still figuring out the best way to put it in everywhere that we work. When I talk to my friends everywhere else, but I think the best way that we can understand it better is just we start to using them and get familiar with them, and then we can adapt it like everything else that we do in our work. And we are not all work the same way.
Okay, great. Thank you. A bit of a longer question here. So someone has explained, I did a full feasibility study for a recyclable construction material, which was carefully built in a project and completely disappeared, even though it was done through a subscription. First, where does IP fall here, as some detailed prompts were sequentially placed to create a decision process? And is there any means to retrieve this work?
Oh, so if I do it, if you did it by your own in your own system, personal system, I don't know if you can find it. If you did it through your IT and there isn't IT behind it, they can go and find what happened to it. It's just that I don't think that it's I'm not sure. I don't know the whole story, but I don't think it's an IP problem. I think that it was something happened in the system and they just disconnected and you lost it. But if you've done the whole process and still you cannot find it, why don't you just go back to them and ask them and tell them all the information? They should have it somewhere. It's just not going to disappear. But yeah, this is a little tricky because also because we don't save our stuff. One of the things that actually I didn't mention that we have to get a backup with all of your project if you put it in, and you can always take the backup and save it locally and not in their system. But I think this is just bad fortunate. I haven't seen it happen, so I'm gonna look into it. I may find an answer.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. So someone has asked, once my professional report or professional drawing is available on public database, such as a municipal development app site, will these documents be usable by others through an AI search?
Of course, when it goes out into City of Toronto's website, at the moment, it's open to public. So someone can actually design an agent to go and look at it. And it happens in the US. There are companies that they do this for RFPs, So they go actually work with architects based on what kind of a project you do and what kind of RFP you want to look for. So these agents go and check all of the open sources, and sometimes not even open one, they have password they can get in, and they look at all of the RFP and find you the one that it works with your office, so you can apply for it. I'm pretty sure it's just very easy to make an agent to go look at City of Toronto's all the zoning application that are online. So yes, if you put it out there, it's public, so it's going to go in. If anyone wants to do it or not, or is it useful or not, is another question. But once it's public, it's public. And that's why when your projects get to the point that it's public, then you can actually use it much easier with this AI yourself too, because now you know that it doesn't matter if you put it out there or not for asking a question or making some adjustment, and your part is it's already a public domain. So yeah.
Okay, great. So someone has asked here, do you have any models of policy practice a firm could add to any manual of employee or something similar?
Unfortunately, I do not. I looked for it, wanted to find one for this presentation. I couldn't find one that I think, and I'm not a lawyer or a policymaker. So, and maybe something that we can go back to OAA and ask them to help us to have a baseline or a sample to look at, because unfortunately, I do not have that. I haven't seen one that I find it okay, or I honestly in Ontario I haven't seen anyone. I saw some of them from the US, but that was not something that I want to share.
Okay, that makes sense. It's still early days, so I guess maybe there will be something coming, but okay, great. So someone has said, with inputting specifications and drawing sets, have you found they've been able to read them reliably? Have you found it too, that's the first part of the question. And the second part, have you found it too costly to constantly query such dense documents?
If I have it in a PDF, it's a very good quality PDF. It's not a handwritten one. They are very good in understanding and reading them, as you said. I find them, they're very reliable because I double check them. It's very costly because it takes time for them to do it. It's not something that, especially if I give them something that has lots of notes, or it's a drawing with lots of notes, it's going to take them like 5, sometimes 10 minutes to do it. Then you have to make a decision that if it's worth it or not, especially because all the energy that goes behind it. But in some point, for example, the door schedule one, in real life, if I want to do it, it's going to take one person 8 hours to do it. So I can make that, okay, one person 8 hours, and it has to use energy anyways. And then if I give it to LLM and it's do it in 10 minutes, and then I go and check it. And if one person do it, I still have to go and check it, or the same person has to double check it. So the checking is still going to stay, but at least the first portion is just much faster. It still uses lots of energy.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So this goes back to maybe a sort of similar question around the graphic images. So someone has asked, have you started to explore using AI to generate design or come up with design options? I see SketchUp and Revit can be driven by Claude now.
I haven't used that. I don't like use LLMs for image or design. It's just my personal fact, because I think machine learnings and these haven't done, they are there to help us as a collaborator. They are not to do what we enjoy to do, which is the design. Of course, you can use it. Of course, people using. I haven't done it, so I don't really know what's the best way to use them as a designer, not as a collaborator. I can have a communication with them and tell them, and they can tell you what you missed, maybe, if you just explain the project for them. If anything's missed, they can tell you or what to look for, but not to actually do the design. I don't think I like to use them as a design. No, right. But that's my fault.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So someone has asked, how can we avoid lay folks using AI to design rather than consulting with a design professional at earlier stages of design to avoid going down an incorrect path and waste time and resources? I recently saw a church group use AI to generate a floor plan for a barrier-free washroom that was incorrect, which they used to get an estimate from a contractor.
That's a very interesting one. Of course, you cannot stop anyone using them. You can educate people. I think that's one of the, I mean, as an OAA register architect, I think we need to think about educating people about what we do, right? So this is one part of it. I don't know what's the best way to educate people not to trust these AI too much. People use them as a consultant when they have a mental health issue, which I cannot understand why, but they do it. Can we just stop them? No. Maybe we just have to let them do it and figure out that it was wrong, and then they come back. Honestly, I will think about that actually, how to educate lay folks. But I think the best way that we go and do presentation. If you have a connection to the church, go and present them and tell them how these LLMs works. I think one of the problem with this is that some people actually don't know how this large language model works. And they think that they are really, really good and they are really smart, but they are based on language. So they have their own limits. And if we let people know and educate people as much as we know, I think that's going to help the whole society, not just our profession.
That's a great point. Yeah. So you have just one more question in the Q&A, but if you are working on typing a question, please feel free to go ahead and get that in the window. But this question is referring to a specific example that you showed, so the hardware schedule example. And they've asked, what was the specific input that allowed the agent to generate the itemized schedule?
I mean, the prompt, I asked the agent specifically to make me a, let me see what I said. Maybe I can go on. Just hold on a second. I asked them to make me a schedule that shows, that put all of those identifications that I wanted for each of those doors. And I'm going to see if I have it here or not. And then I share it. Oh no, I'm going to go. And then I asked them to make it interactive because I wanted to make sure that it's interactive. No, sorry, that's the one that I just made. So my first prompt was, if I can see how this, create a form based on the door numbers and identify which hardware each door gets. So very simple. And then it come and ask a few questions about all of these. It flagged that there is some difference between them. And then I asked them, and they asked how much, and I said how much I want. I want them all. I want them in an Excel spreadsheet, and I want it to be interactive. So yeah, nothing very specific. I didn't put too much effort in prompting them well. I could prompt them well. I could ask them when I put it in that I want it to be how many, for example, if I want it to be by different disciplines, if I wanted to show up where is the architects goes, where is the hardware goes, there's a way that we usually do it. So I didn't ask them to do that. I just asked them to list all the doors and show all of these abbreviation for each doors. There is a better ways, of course, to do it. You can make it more specific based on the disciplines. That's going to help better. So yeah, this is maybe not that much very well prompted, but you can have a better prompting. Sorry, I don't know if it's going to help, but if anything, if you ever want to ask me a question and make me to think about it, because I can just think a little bit every time I do it, but I know that I miss so many things. If I go here, this one, I think I prompted the same, and it's
sorry, it looks like they've added a follow-up to the question. So they said the response is helpful, but they just wanted to know what documents were shared with the agent, for example, the door schedule.
Yeah. I have a cleanup. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna show you the document because I have a very clean document. So this is the door schedule that I had. very simple door schedule. Oops, sorry, not this one. I have the hardware. The hardware schedule is one of these report kind of schedules with all the doors in it. You can see that how it is. And I had the low voltage drawings, which basically plans with all the doors showing what they get. As you can see, well, really bad in this. It's very quality when you see it in my screen, sorry. So basically I had the door schedule, I had the low voltage drawings, and I had the hardware. And that was it. And I put them in and then back and forth with them.
Mm.
I could do better. I could make it more clear, of course. I could add electrical engineer's document in it, but I just wanted to basically find those abbreviations for each door. That was the whole goal of this practice for me at the time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think that that answers all of the questions. So thank you so much, Arizu, for, again, this really helpful and informative presentation. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure our members did as well. We are going to just transition into a few closing announcements before we leave for today. Again, just as a reminder, if you do have further questions, any follow-ups for our speaker, the email address is in the chat, along with a few links that were shared as resources. So make sure to copy that down before we close off for today. But again, just a few closing announcements. Again, thanks so much to all of our attendees. I know we had such a great group. We had a large number of people here today, so everyone is very eager to learn about this topic. So I hope everyone took something away from the presentation. And thank you all for your participation as well. So for those who are seeking continuing education learning hours, a reminder that the OAA will record your participation in this webinar on your OAA transcript. So there is no need for individual reporting on your part. We just kindly ask for your patience at this busy time of year as we process and confirm the accreditation of your hours within the next few weeks. Attendees are going to soon receive a copy of our presenter slides, as well as a link to a survey to submit your feedback for today's webinar. So we at the OAA and our presenters really highly value this feedback. So if you do get a moment to complete the survey once you receive the link, please do. Our next webinar is actually also AI themed, and this one has the title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, How AI-Enabled Teams Are Disrupting Collaboration Patterns. So this one is going to be presented by Gensler's Annie Bergeron on Wednesday, May 27th, so next Wednesday. So you can check out the Continuing Education webinar series page on the OAA website to register for that webinar, and also to see a list of all of our upcoming webinar offerings. If you are looking for additional ways to get your Con Ed hours before the end of cycle, be sure to also check out the Con Ed opportunities page where we list continuing education opportunities offered by other organizations beyond the OAA. So with that, I will say thank you once again to Arizu for a wonderful presentation, and thank you to all of you for your attendance, and have a pleasant remainder of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That's great.